I can't imagine that I'm the only one who's ever wondered what it would be like if the creators of your favourite stories came to you one day and said, "Hey, random stranger, how would you like to write the continuation of this particular story?" It's always been a fun little fantasy of mine that I've had, and I've found that it's helped me to better understand what kind of storyteller I want to be. This is not to say that this is how I feel particular sequels and continuations should be written, only if I was given the opportunity, this is how I would tell that kind of story. I've wanted to make this kind of video for a while now, but I've never had the chance to. There's been a few different topics and films and TV series and video games that I've wanted to have a go at this for a while now, and I figured why not start with how I would write The Last of Us Part 3. So this video will contain heavy spoilers for The Last of Us Part 1 and 2. I would highly encourage you to experience the video games for yourselves. It's an understatement to say that both installments have taken the video game and world by storm. If you have clicked on this video, I imagine that you have a vague understanding of what the series is about. But if not, here's a quick rundown. The world is ravaged by a mutation of the cordyceps fungus, turning whoever is infected into aggressive and violent creatures. The majority of the first game is seen through the eyes of Joel Miller, a smuggler who is tasked with escorting a young girl named Ellie across the country, as she is somehow immune to the infection. On their journey, the two develop a strong bond together, which Joel tries to push away from, fearing that he will relive the pain he felt on the day of the outbreak, when his daughter Sarah died in his arms. They make it to their destination where the Fireflies, a rebellious militia group, prepare to go through with a surgery on Ellie which may lead to a production of a vaccine against the infection. However, when Joel learns that Ellie will die in the process, he fights his way through the Fireflies and takes her, later lying to her that the Fireflies have stopped looking for a cure and have found other immune individuals like her. Even though Ellie has her doubts, she chooses to believe Joel. Cut to black. Part 2 picks up 5 years later, with Ellie and Joel on uneasy terms as it's revealed in a flashback that Ellie has discovered the truth about what Joel did. The consequences for Joel's actions don't stop there, as a small group from a separate militia encounter Joel and his brother Tommy and brutally beats them, fatally wounding Joel, with Ellie watching on helplessly. This group is led by Abby, who is the daughter of the surgeon that Joel killed when he took Ellie from the hospital at the end of the first game. Part 2 shifts perspectives between Ellie and Abby, both in the present and with flashbacks, showing how they have both become almost kindred spirits in a vicious cycle of hatred and violence as they hunt down one another to enact their vengeance, as death seems to follow them wherever they go, their actions escalating and destroying everything around them, all coming together in a final confrontation where Ellie is moments away from killing Abby but is unable to go through with it. The final shot showing Ellie alone in a vast world, unsure of what the future holds. Cut to black. I didn't even scratch the surface of what these two games have to offer. Something that stuck with me at the end of Part 2 is how it didn't really feel so much like the end of the story, more like the end of Act 2. It felt like there was still more of Ellie's story to be told. It felt like we were on the brink of reaching the conclusion. Part 1 represented Ellie's childhood growing into and beginning to understand the world she lives in under the guidance of an experienced mentor, and Part 2 represented her chaotic turn from a teenager into adulthood, as she fights against a world that makes her feel like nothing, and where everything she strives to do seems to be futile. Part 3 should be where Ellie is on the verge of becoming that experienced mentor figure that Joel was in the first game, taking everything she has learned and so that she can become the person that she wants to be. But who is that person? Well, that would be where the story for Part 3 starts. I would say it's been more than a year since the end of Part 2, and Ellie is lost and unsure of who she even is anymore, aimlessly wandering through the harsh world day by day with no goal other than to survive. I reckon that she would not have gone back to Jackson, where I believe her girlfriend Dina has returned. Instead, Ellie is meandering from place to place, until she stumbles across a derelict quarantine zone in Salt Lake City, abandoned by the military with no apparent survivors. That is until Ellie encounters an elderly and sickly individual. They aren't infected, but they do look to be on the verge of death, left behind by those who were supposed to protect them. Many left to fend for themselves, or went to join the Fireflies, who we learnt at the end of the last game are slowly rebuilding and rising from the ashes. Ellie and the elderly figure spend some time around a warm fire, with Ellie even offering to share the last of her food, but is rejected as her new companion states that they will be dead soon, so there's no point in her wasting the food on them. But Ellie insists. Ellie talks about how she's drawn to this particular place because it reminded her of where she was born and where she grew up within the Boston quarantine zone, wishfully hoping that something that reminded her of her past would give her some clarity and a goal on how to proceed in the future. Her elderly companion empathizes with her, as they have only the past to look towards, despite Ellie trying to elicit some hope that they can still find a future, amusing her new friend as Ellie initially gave the impression of someone who was lost and defeated, but could still look in the right direction when the occasion called for it. All Ellie needs to do is walk in that direction instead of always looking back. The next day arrives, and when Ellie awakens, she finds a new friend has passed away peacefully in their sleep. It's a moment of sadness, but Ellie does feel a small fire inside of her flicker once again. She holds her head high and heads back out into the new world. Now, I'm not going to go into every little detail about the story that I imagined, but I did want to talk about the introduction because I feel that it would establish the themes that I want to use in my story. Part 1 was about love, Part 2 was about hatred, so for me Part 3 would be about apathy and empathy. Ellie's had her moments in both games where she had suffered through traumatic events and has become distant and defeated, but she would find a way to fight back against her trauma, whether that be through the brief glimpses of hope and life that the world displays, or through her strengthening the bonds of the people that are close to her. Right now, Ellie is at her lowest point, and it's not going to be something that she can fix right away, or even at all. Trauma, fear, anxiety, despair, they can linger and last for a lifetime, but that doesn't mean that they define a person. Ellie is strong-willed and hopeful, and I believe she will always try to find a way to keep fighting. The reason why she was angry at Joel between Last of Us Part 1 and 2 is because she felt like her purpose was taken away from her. She felt like she mattered in a world where everything dies because of her immunity. The story of Part 2 did everything in its power to make Ellie feel even smaller and insignificant. She fought against the world to avenge her world, just as Joel fought against the world to save his. But the world is a big place. There are people fighting for causes similar to Ellie and Joel. The world doesn't revolve around them. At the end of Part 2, when Ellie confronts Abby, Abby doesn't retaliate despite her earlier threats. Instead, Abby's priority is saving Lev, who is now her world. It's Ellie that antagonizes. It's Ellie that threatens another life so that she can take Abby's. She wants this to matter because not doing so would remind her of how small and insignificant she feels in this world. If she had her way, I'm sure Ellie would happily hop aboard a rocket ship and fly to another world where she could matter again. But when hearing Joel would do what he did all over again and doesn't regret his decision to save her, I think that was the trigger for a slow realization in the back of Ellie's mind that she does matter. Even if she's not able to save the world, she meant the world to someone, and she didn't want to destroy another's, repeating the cycle of hatred all over again. She grows to become more empathetic and thus grows into the person that Joel wants her to be, someone who's not stuck in the past or frozen in time like a broken watch. That would be another theme that I would want to explore in the story, the idea of past, present, and future. And to do that, I thought it'd be fun to take things to the next level with this story. Throughout Part 1, you play the majority of the story through Joel. In Part 2, the majority of the story is a dual perspective between Ellie and Abby. So it would make sense if Part 3 had 3 perspectives. Ellie would be the obvious one. For a second point of view, I figured we needed someone who we're already familiar with, but with a story still left to tell. And who better than someone who's been here since the literal beginning, and that would be Joel's brother Tommy. I think this could lead to a great bit of conflict between Tommy and Ellie, as while they still love and care for each other, they didn't leave on the best of terms at the end of Part 2. With Tommy becomes so desperate for revenge against Abby, he encourages Ellie to fulfill her promise to hunt Abby down and kill her for the murder of Joel, a development which would leave Ellie alone and with her world shattered. While I wouldn't have Ellie and Tommy meeting again since their heated arguments on the farm, I would think that Tommy would still be filled with guilt at what he's forced Ellie to go through, especially when Dina has returned to Jackson to tell them that Ellie went off to look for Abby again. Tommy has lost a lot, and it didn't get better at the end of Part 2, where he was left severely injured and not on speaking terms with Maria. Tommy would be so consumed with anger and guilt at himself for driving a deeper wedge between him and the only family he has left, he would leave Jackson and go to the one place that makes sense to him, back to the Fireflies. While he might not be able to fight as well as he used to, he still has valuable experience and can lead many inexperienced newcomers into the militia group. If we were to picture this in gameplay, he would have a small group with him, scavenging for supplies or trying to find new recruits. So while his movement might be limited, he would have the assistance of his companions if required. However, his relationship with the Fireflies wouldn't be rosy. He is broken and defeated mentally, and the Fireflies know this. They keep him around for his knowledge, using him to train up the next generation and gain valuable information about old posts and lookouts. To them, his life doesn't really matter, only his experience does, and Tommy stays with them because he believes he has nowhere else to go, haunted by his past. There would be a few members that would be kind to him and attempt to build a friendship with him, as the Fireflies are a diverse group, but I would imagine that he would be quite standoffish, always keeping his distance and never letting his true self slip, though there might be moments where he would let the guilt and the pain get to him, and again the Fireflies are always there to try to exploit it out of him. So while Ellie is looking towards the future, Tommy seems to be stuck in the past. So then who would have that third perspective? Who would be the one to represent the present? The world as it is now? Well, while I have Tommy and Ellie on opposing sides, they wouldn't exactly be enemies. No matter how tight the Fireflies make their noose around Tommy's neck, he would never bring himself to hurt Ellie. There should be an antagonistic force outside of the infected that still poses a legitimate threat. And this is where we are introduced to Major General Kurtz, leader of a military group that has become known as the Shepherds. The Shepherds were initially deployed like any other military group to become a sanctuary for those seeking refuge. I think Las Vegas would be an interesting setting for a quarantine zone, so let's go with that. But, under the iron rule of Kurtz, it's become his own world where the man's word is rule, and those who do not abide have no place in his world. Now, this doesn't sound too dissimilar from what we saw at the Boston quarantine zone in part 1, but what stands out is Kurt would be someone who's at the forefront of everything. Imagine Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men if he was in charge of a military group that was in the hundreds. Someone who's not afraid to get involved and soak his hands in blood. Someone who seems 5 steps ahead of everyone else. Someone that no one seems to understand, or can understand. Everything about his past is shrouded in mystery, not because no one knows, but because everyone has heard different stories. He would retell past events in different ways each time, to the point where if you were to get an honest answer out of him, he might not be able to recount it properly because now he can't remember which lie is the truth. Because to him, his past no longer matters. All that matters to him is the present where he is in control. The shepherds would control the news that is spread around to the survivors that are living within their walls. Many will have grown to believe whatever the shepherds say, while others will just go along with what they say just so that they can survive. Kurtz would be the third playable character, and it would be a dark irony if the character that we don't want to be, the one who's shown to be a cruel and heartless man willing to do anything to remain in control, is an unstoppable force of nature. He has no close ties with anyone, he just wants to remain on top. But do you know what would make things worse? Is the moments where you play as someone other than Kurtz. Because if Ellie or Tommy were to cross paths with him, it would not be a fight, it would be a struggle to survive. So a little tidbit about Naughty Dog's other franchise game, Uncharted. The protagonist of the game, Nathan Drake, doesn't actually take damage from gunfire. Instead, his life bar is represented by luck. Bullets narrowly miss and whiz past his head until his luck runs out, and the player doesn't react quickly enough, he will be gunned down. Now imagine this but in the reverse. You as the player have your enemy locked on target, but the bullet doesn't land. No matter how sharp your aim is, you can never seem to hit your opponent. Similar to Abby's encounter with Tommy in part 2, you can't hit your enemy, but your enemy will always have the opportunity to kill you. All you can do is try to escape. Okay, so before I jump into how I would set up the story for The Last of Us Part 3, I think I need to address the elephant in the room and talk about Abby's role. Would I have a return for a Part 3? To be honest, I think her story is told, at least within the one that I want to tell. For me, Abby was the externalized reflection of hatred that Ellie felt towards herself. Abby killed Joel just as Ellie was beginning to restore her relationship with Joel. That opportunity for her to forgive him was torn away from Ellie. Because of this, the last few years were filled with pain and hate. Ellie hates herself for not being able to forgive Joel in time, just as much as she hates Abby for killing him. Her quest for revenge against Abby wasn't veiled to mask her feelings of regret. That's why there was that flashback to her last conversation with Joel. She has spent the whole game believing that Joel died, not knowing how much she loved him, and was willing to forgive him. But she realized that Joel did know. All that was left was for her to forgive herself. She didn't let Abby live because she forgave Abby, but because she wanted to forgive herself. Just like before, the realization came too late, as losing her fingers in the fight with Abby meant she could no longer play the guitar, one of the last mementos given to her by Joel, so she leaves the guitar to rest in the house so that she can start to make peace with her past and move on. Because of that, I think Ellie has moved on from her confrontation with Abby, just as Abby had done by prioritizing saving Lev over her confrontation with Ellie. Plus, I've always felt that characters constantly running into each other tends to make the world feel smaller, especially something on the Last of Us grand scale that stretches across a vast landscape. I know that there's an ending title screen which does show that Abby and Lev did make it to the Fireflies, but since I still have the Fireflies journeying out to find new recruits, I believe that before Tommy returns to them, Abby and Lev ventured out, getting sidetracked, and are now on their own little adventure somewhere. Now going back to the story, like I said, I would have the narrative told through our 3 different characters, alternating between each of them when need be. Ellie would return to Jackson in the hopes of rebuilding her future with Dina, who was still hurt by Ellie's choice at the end of part 2. This will be the first step of Ellie assuming the experienced mentor role that Joel had in the first game, as she now finds herself in his shoes when he made a choice at the end of part 1 to save her life over finding a cure. However, there's another problem that Ellie must face. The Fireflies are growing and have revealed that there is a young woman who is immune to the infection, Ellie. Ellie is met with an array of different reactions from friends and allies: disbelief, confusion, anger. Maria would reveal that Tommy had rejoined the Fireflies and that he was the one that let the information slip, which Ellie would of course refuse to believe. After all, that's not the Tommy she knows, which Maria agrees with, but the Tommy that Ellie knew is gone. Throughout the game, we would see a battered and broken Tommy who is being used by the Fireflies to fit their agenda. While the Fireflies aren't evil, they aren't exactly saints either. Their best surgeon is dead, and any hope of finding a vaccine with Ellie is gone. But that doesn't mean that they can't use Ellie to prop themselves up as a beacon of hope so that people will join their cause. They will use Ellie as their symbol, and Tommy is with them as he has nowhere else to go, and at this point, he is at his lowest, unable to escape his past, which is filled with death and loss. The news of Ellie's immunity will of course reach the shepherds, who who are right in the middle of it all. Kurtz will do everything he can to stifle out this rumor and extinguish people's hope for a brighter future, so that he can continue to live out his tyrannical present for as long as possible. Ellie, Dina, and everyone that they know and love will be caught in the middle of this war, forced to flee and survive, battling other humans and many infected along the way as their paths cross with Tommy and Kurtz. And Ellie now once again finds herself becoming the most important person in the world, but not in the way that she wanted. She can't actually cure anyone. She knows she can't save anyone. The Ellie that was going to save the world is gone. But then, something miraculous will happen. On the radio, a mother and father reach out to Ellie from California, right across from Death Valley. Because Death Valley would sound like a great setting for this kind of game, they revealed that their child, only 5 years old, was bitten 2 weeks ago, and he didn't turn. Another child has been born that is immune. But is it just the one? Are there any more? Right now it doesn't matter. Word has spread and everything has changed. People now don't know what to feel or think anymore. Ellie feels like the literal weight of the world has been lifted off her shoulders. But for Kurtz, his world will start to crumble. This is where he'll become more violent, killing everyone to achieve his goal, including his own followers. I can only imagine how dark that would be if played out from his perspective in gameplay. Tommy wouldn't know what to feel. He thinks back to what things were like before the infection, and he understands why people would be scared. There was still death, there was still corruption long before the infected took over. He will continue to lash out at all those who try to help him, the Fireflies who genuinely care for his well-being, Maria, and even Ellie. But Ellie will still be there for him. She tells him that the future won't be the same. Things have changed too much. Humanity may look to its past, but it won't make the same mistakes from before, just as Ellie has done, and how she hopes Tommy will do the same. Throughout the game there will be conflict and drama of all kinds. The infected will be more frequent and varied than ever before as the years have passed and they've become more wild and stronger. Now, I did think about the possibility of the appearance of infected animals, like some concept art for the first game did tease. The reasoning for this would be maybe that the Cordyceps no longer views humans as the dominant species on the planet, so it now has to grow to thrive on a new host. But I feel like this would be too much to add this late into the story. Perhaps there could be something where maybe a pack of normal lions that have been on the hunt are around. After all, hungry lions don't need a fungi sprouting from their manes to suddenly become dangerous. As for other humans, they would be smarter and more dangerous than before. Taking inspiration from the bloaters, I imagine some would have found a way to safely gather spores and use them as bombs akin to smoke grenades. While they won't be effective against Ellie, it will leave her isolated and alone unless her allies have gathered face masks that they can use. Until that time, Ellie is forced to face off against whatever enemies come towards her alone. Eventually, the three narratives will come together in a final struggle, with Ellie trying to protect the immune young child, holding them in their arms as Kurtz has her at gunpoint. He's about to pull the trigger when Tommy steps in to put him down in the nick of time. It's been a long journey, and it's far from over. Ellie and Dina will look to the horizon, curious about what the future has in store for them. There's no telling how many more immune could be born. It might take years, it might even take decades, but there might still be more that will come. The final shots will zoom in towards Ellie's wrist, where she has a watch that was given to her by Dina, and as this story started with a wristwatch that stopped when the world did, this one starts ticking, signaling that the world may be on the road to recovery. Fade to black. I'm not saying that this is the way Last of Us Part 3 should be written. Part 3 might have a more bleak ending as it seems to fit more with the tone of the story, but that's just not the type of writer that I am. I just find it fun to imagine the possibilities. I'm the type of person that likes to look at unused scripts for films, not because I think that they could be better than what we already got, but because every writer is different and can give a new perspective on characters or a story that you might not have thought about before. I know that my ideas are all over the place. This is a different kind of video from anything that I've ever made before, and I'm sure that you could probably tell that I was pretty nervous trying to get all my thoughts down, and there's a lot more that I wanted to talk about that I didn't quite get involved because I feel that this video was getting dragged out for a bit too long, but I wanted to express the kind of story that I wanted to tell, and this is how I would tell the story of The Last of Us Part 3.